So the first one, dependent arising. There we have this feeling of a self-existent, poor self-pity me doesn't deserve anything. Meaning I'm not the cause of this. How dare it happen? Thinking about cause and effect, the first level of dependent arising shatters that. It helps you realise, therefore, there's no self-existent, poor self-pity little me there, which is emptiness. So dependent arising is the way of presenting how things exist conventionally. And as Lama Zopa Rinpoche puts it, it's the king of logics to prove the ultimate truth that, therefore, there is no uncaused little I in there who's an innocent victim. That's the very first level of understanding so-called emptiness. And I'm going to later, well, it could be now, we'll discuss that word emptiness, because we totally misconceive it, completely have the wackiest ideas about what it means. And I want to look at the word the way, okay, I think I'll do that now. So we'll stop this discussion about dependent arising, which is the king of logics to prove emptiness. Now let's look at the word emptiness and get our head around just ordinary life, how this concept is used so we don't mystify it. I mean, the views about emptiness are insane, like it's an equivalent of God, it's the absolute, it's nothingness, it's all this rubbish, you know. Just keep it simple. Let's keep it simple. The word emptiness. When we can understand this intellectually, we can really start to make this stuff common sense, you know. Okay, in ordinary life, we'll go like, we'll talk like this, won't we? We'll go, my cup's empty. So we know that means there is a thing called a cup, which lacks my hot water. We wouldn't say, my cup is lacking hot water. We don't talk like that. We just say, my cup's empty, and because you know I drink hot water, you'll come up and fill it up with hot water for me. So we'll say like that, my cup's empty. So it means, it's shorthand for saying there is no tea in my cup, there is no hot water in my cup. It's shorthand for that, isn't it? We talk this way, it's natural. If you look in the room, you're looking for I'm looking for something, and I look in the room like, the room's empty. We know it means of people. We know that, it's conventional language. So it's an ordinary concept that we use. So the word itself just simply means something is lacking something. Is it not true? You agree with this, don't you? So we might say, oh God, look at my bank account, oh God, it's empty. We might not say that, but we kind of could. And we mean there's no dollars in it. So it's a conventional term, it just means there isn't something there. Isn't it? It's reasonable. So there's a cup that does exist that lacks something else. There's a room that does exist that lacks something else, people. There is a bank account that does exist that lacks something else, money. That's how we talk. Well, Buddha also says things are empty. He says everything's empty. He says the entire universe, whatever exists, is empty. But we should ask him, the obvious question is, empty of what, Buddha? Instead of going, wow, everything's empty. Oh, wow. Don't be cosmic. You should ask him, empty of what, please? Can you kindly finish your sentence? And he will say, guess what, honey? Everything is empty of inherent existence. Now, okay, we don't know what inherent existence means, but don't get too panic-stricken yet. One step at a time, please. He's saying everything that does exist conventionally, cups, toilets, persons, Buddhas, microphones, lack a thing, lack a characteristic. That's all. Like a cup lacks water, a bank account lacks money, the room lacks people. So everything lacks something, but that's the thing we have to learn to comprehend what he's talking about. What are things empty of? What is it that things don't have? And so what he's telling us is very simple. Okay, that's complicated, let's say. What's your name again?
Capucine.
Spell it.
Capucine.
Capuchin.
No.
But say it again.
Cappuccino.
I know, but say how you say it.
Capucine.
Capucin. Okay, so let's say Capucin is colorblind. Let's think. Let's say when she sees this, can we all see this as sort of lime green? You agree, don't we? Conventional terms, we accept, given the way the room is with light, that this colour we've all learned is called lime green. Would we accept the conventional truth of that? Okay, let's say she's colourblind, and she sees pink. Let's just say. Now we know conventionally she's making a mistake, isn't she? We know that. So with the poor thing, we don't bully her into believing the truth. We should try and help her, shouldn't we? Which means we fix her poor little eyes. Let's just pretend. You accept this. Now listen to this, please. All her life, she's believed this is pink. Every time lime green appears, she sees pink. She's never seen it as true. She's never seen it as lime green. So naturally, whenever it comes along, she expects it to be lime green, doesn't she? It's natural. It's been programmed into her mind that lime green is pink. You with me, people? Can you imagine that? Just pretend. Now, all her life she's expected that, especially if she's seen this thing every day and it's hers. As far as she's concerned, it's a pink lid. She's totally believed it. Every time she sees it, pink comes back to her. She's never doubted it for a second. This is perfectly possible, isn't it? Now let's just imagine. We fix her eyes. We fix her eyes. Hear my point. I now present this lid to her again. Now what will she now see? It's not complicated. What will she now see? What do you think? Sorry? It makes sense, doesn't it? It would be reasonable to think that, wouldn't it? But let me tell you what you'll see first. You listen to this. She'll go, oh my God, it's not pink. She'll get a shock, won't she? Why? Why?
Because of what she's used to seeing.
Because she's used to seeing it in one way, and she gets the shock of her life. When we now present the truth to her, the first thing she will see, and now listen to these words, is the absence of pink. It's called the emptiness of pink. Can you hear that as a concept? So it's not something your eyes can see. It's something conceptual, isn't it? Because she's expecting pink. She's completely believed it's pink. And the truth is now there, but the first thing she'll see is the absence of pink, and it'll be this big shock. Let's say you believe you've got 1 lakh of rupees in your bank account. Let's just say, completely, you've been saving it up. You completely know there's 1 lakh in there. You completely expect it. And then you wake and you get an eye and you open up your bank account. And what's written there is a 0. Believe me, you won't say, there's no rupees in my bank. You won't say that, will you? You'll go, oh my God, where are my 100,000 rupees? Won't you say that? Won't you have a panic attack and freak out? So what you give a name, okay, everything that exists in the universe, when you first study Buddhist philosophy, this is a really major point. Hear it. You first establish there are various terms that are used for that which exists. Why? Because Buddha says, hey people, I want you to cognize that which exists. Because right now, because of all our ridiculous delusions, we are projecting lies onto what that exists. We're not seeing the truth. We're projecting lies. These delusions project lies, like her colour blindness projects a lie onto what does exist. So we're living in lies. So okay, he's saying, then we better first, we're going to start discussing how things exist. So let's get it clear first. And so the term phenomenon, the term existent, the term established base, the term object of knowledge, these are all synonyms. And everything that exists in the universe, which is finally what our mind can cognize, that's when we realize emptiness. That's when we become a Buddha. We finally cognize that which exists. There's no longer any disconnect between that which exists and what our mind cognizes. That's the characteristic of a Buddha's mind, and we can all get that. That's the final wisdom. So right now there's this disconnect between what does exist and what our mind cognizes. So we first establish conventionally what is this phenomenon, the object, established base, existent. They're all synonyms for that which does exist. So now, where was I there? What happened? Okay, so we can say, conventionally speaking, here is a lime green lid. But she's got this mistake in her mind, has had it all the time. She knows theoretically about lime green, but she's never seen lime green. So this is not complicated. This is easy to prove, this one. This is simple. So then because she's expecting it, we fix the problem, we've removed the lie from her mind. Nakedly, the truth is now there, but what you will first see is the absence of that fantasy. In your bank, you're convinced there was 100,000 rupees. You're completely looking forward to it. You're so excited. But the key one is you believe it's there. So when you simply see it, that there's in fact zero there, you can't believe it in the beginning. You don't believe it. You don't want to believe it. It's too hysterical. You have a panic attack. It's so clear we get this idea. Let's say you're married and one day you've been home, you had a husband. Let's say he's my husband. What's your name?
Gaurang.
Who?
Gaurang.
Spell it.
Gaurang.
Gaurang. Gaurang. Okay, let's say Gaurang's my husband. And he's been there for 30 years. So naturally, I expect him to be there tonight, don't I? Because he's always been there for the last 30 years. And this is how we cling to things as permanent. Forget about clinging to things as self-existent. I expect him to be there. Of course I do. Because I'm grasping at permanence. And guess what? When I get home and there's a note. I've left you for the secretary, darling. Bye. Now, the first thing is you don't believe it, do you? The first thing is I won't go, oh, he's left me. Okay, have a cup of tea. No way! There's no way in the universe, because I can't bear to even see the truth. And maybe you, all my friends have seen it for ages. You've seen it coming. You've known it's coming because I'm living in a la-la land because of all my delusions that lie to me because I can't bear the truth. This is how mind works. This is why Buddha says we're all suffering. Because all the delusions have their own lies. Attachment sees a much more delicious cake that's really than what's really there. My anger sees a much more ugly boss than what's really there. Well, this ego grasping even makes up the very thing itself. It's the most primordial lie of all. So, there is a bank account that does exist. There is a lid that does exist. Speaking simply, This is a simple example of getting our head around the concept of the absence of something. It's an abstract concept, but we can see. So the point is this. Do you accept, just to get again used to this idea of the absence of something, the emptiness of something as being a phenomenon, do you accept that green does exist on this lid? We can accept that conventionally, can't we? You accept that, don't you? Do you accept that pink does not exist on this lid? Do you accept that? So turn not pink into a phenomenon that your mind can cognize. Make it a noun or a nounal phrase. It's called absence of pink. Do you accept that the absence of pink does exist on this lid? You can accept that, can't you? So once you get this concept, it seems just merely intellectual, but it's not. The green is a regular, impermanent phenomenon that does exist on this lid. So therefore it is an existent, it's an object of knowledge, it's a phenomenon, etc. Well, the absence of pink exists on this lid for her now, doesn't it? Because she's realised the reality now. So that is a genuine, it's a phenomenon that does exist, just like the green exists, but it's more abstract, isn't it? It's more abstract. You accept that point, don't you? So our mind, can you see, the definition of an existent is that which mind can cognize. Well, her mind can now cognize the absence of pink, can't it? It's conceptual, isn't it? It's not a function of her eyes, is it? A dog couldn't see it, could they? You get my point here? But it is a very real phenomenon that does exist. And it's merely intellectual here, it sounds fascinating. But this is the point now. What Buddha is saying is this. Since beginningless time, this root delusion, known as ma-ripa, unawareness, or colloquially, it's very tasty, ego grasping. This lie is underpinning all the other lies. Attachment, anger, pride, all the dramas, the grasping at permanence, these are all these lies that for eons we have been believing in. This is what he's saying, what Buddha's saying. For it's so familiar with, when attachment is, my attachment glasses are on, the cake that is there will appear to me as way more delicious than it actually is. If you have aversion for chocolate cake, you've got your angry glasses on, your aversion glasses, so the cake that will appear to you is an ugly cake. We know this. We do this every day. And the tragedy is we've been doing these lies, we've been telling these lies for so long that we don't realise that my attachment has made up delicious cake. We don't realise that. We don't realise that, that my aversion, because I get a bellyache every time I eat cake, has made up ugly cake. We don't realise, as Lama Zopa says, all these delusions, all the way down to the root delusion, the subtlest one, this is what he says, are decorating. What they do is they decorate on top of what does exist. layers upon layers upon layers of characteristics that just don't exist there. That's how these neuroses work. This is the reason we suffer, Buddha says. When we can comprehend this from going to high school and studying Buddhist psychology, we can now easily begin to understand emptiness. Without this, we have no basis. It's just too weird, you know. How we've got delusions that lie to us, that misconceive things, that cause things not to appear as they actually exist. So these are the relative lies, attachment and anger and the rest. But the final lie, the one that's the source of the other lies, is this one called ignorance. Just simply called ignorance. But as His Holiness said, it's not regular old ignorance. You know, regular old ignorance, let's say I say to Kapusin, what's that? What colour is that? But let's say she just says, I don't know. That's easy ignorance to fix, isn't it? I just say it's lime green and she gets it. But if she thinks it's pink, she's in serious trouble. Because not only does she not know the truth that it's lime green, she's made up a big fat lie on top. Just saying I don't know is easy ignorance. I would think we'd get enlightened in a couple of years if our ignorance was like that. But as His Holiness says, it's this ignorance that not only doesn't know how everything actually exists finally, but has made up a lie on top. And that lie is the exact opposite of the reality. So that's why it's painful to see the reality. It's painful to give up delusions. It's painful to give up anger and pride and jealousy. The emotional component we understand, but the real function of all these lies is they're liars. They're delusional. They cause things to appear to us in a way that isn't true. This is exactly how ignorance works, and we only really hear this when we study emptiness, but this is how the mind works. This is like high school first. When we get this, it's not so difficult to comprehend first intellectually the teachings about emptiness. Are we communicating here? Are we communicating? Yes. What, sweetheart? Yes, absolutely. I haven't even been, we're just giving the background. So keep going. We'll keep going, but ask the question.
See, when you are saying that in essence it is lime green, but to her it is appearing as pink.
Yes.
Why are we calling it emptiness rather than delusion?
Okay, darling. So your point is really the use of words. Let's hear the words. Just try and just get the simple use of words in ordinary English language. So delusion means what? What's the term delusion?
Lie.
Lying. Good. So delusion is a name for a state of mind. Would you agree? A delusion is a lie, and that's a thought in the mind. Even if you say 1 + 1 is 3, that's a delusion, isn't it? So it's a state of mind we're talking about. Would you agree? Delusion is referring to a thought. Would you agree? So what is pink referring to? What is pink? It's a colour, isn't it? It's a colour. So pink is a colour. Lime green is a colour. Do you accept that? But delusion is a lie. So they're two separate phenomena. A delusion. So she has a delusion in her mind. That's the way it is. That believes lime green is pink. Do you accept that? That's a correct statement. Now, when we fix her eyes, which is causing her to believe something wrong, isn't it? We fix her eyes. So now you would assume she will see the truth, which is it's lime green. Would you accept that? That's reasonable. The lie has gone now, hasn't it? But because she's got the leftover memory of it being pink, do you hear what I'm saying? She will get a surprise first, won't she? Do you agree with that? She'll get a shock, won't she? So what I'm trying to say is this. The way Buddha's talking, and I'll get to the point, is what actually appears to her first is this shocking absence of pink. Like your bank account, you believe 100,000 rupees is there. You won't just accept the simple fact that there's no rupees there first, will you? You'll get a big shock. Your heart will beat. You say, where is it? It's not possible. It's not possible. You'll keep saying that, won't you? So what Buddha's saying is, using this analogy, and we'll get to the real point in a minute, what you just cognized is a phenomenon called absence of 100,000 rupees. This is a very powerful point to get first. It's the absence of something. The absence of something. Every time I go home to my husband, all I will notice in that house every day is the absence of my husband. It's very vivid, isn't it? But you see what I'm saying? So that absence, well, if you come home to if you visit me for the first time, you didn't know I had a husband, you won't notice the absence of a husband, will you? And if I look into your bank account and I see 0, I won't see the absence of 100,000 rupees. And if I look at this, I won't see the absence of pink. So they imply inventions we've made up that aren't really existing. So we turn it into a noun, and it's called the absence of pink, the absence of a husband, the absence of 100,000 rupees. Are you hearing me? Now we're communicating. That's a real vivid phenomenon. Remember, the term phenomenon in Buddhism refers to whatever exists. So that absence of 100,000 rupees really does exist for you, doesn't it? Are you hearing me? Okay, now, here we're talking about what Buddha's saying. And he's saying this ego grasping, this root delusion, this primordial delusion, which experientially just causes us to have fear, to feel separate, to feel lonely, to feel bereft, to feel something's missing, that then has attachment to get what that poor eye wants, that gets angry when the poor eye doesn't get what it wants, that gets proud when somebody insults this poor little me. In other words, the assumption in our mind is a real, solid, definite I in there. We have that feeling, don't we? We believe that, don't we? So this is what we're trying to do now in the second level of dependent arising. Now this is the point. Get to it slowly. 2 minutes to 1. We'll start it, then we'll continue up to lunch. It's this. This is the second point about dependent arising, and this is not the subtlest meaning of emptiness yet. But this is extremely tasty, and this is where it's hard. What Buddha is saying is this. The second level of dependent arising, everything that exists is made of bits and pieces. I mean, it sounds reasonable enough, we get to know that. So would we agree we're called a person, conventionally? We're known as persons. We're not chairs or toilets, right? We're persons. So he's saying chairs and toilets as well, and persons are made up of many bits and pieces. They call it made of parts. Now, we can say very simply from the Buddhist perspective, we're made up of body and we're made up of mind. We've got two main parts. We can accept this for the moment. Body and mind. Mind is all the different thoughts, and body is the eyes and the eyelashes and the knees and the pee-pee and the caca. You understand my point? We've got bits and pieces of the body, and we have bits and pieces of the mind. We agree with this? So we can narrow them down to two main parts, body and mind. We accept this? We accept this. Okay, good. What he's saying is this. Because of this ego grasping, because of this maripa, we have for eons, and do now, 1,000,000,000% believe that among these parts, somewhere, walking hand in hand with the other parts, there is a boss part called I. Look at our language. I am sitting here. I did not do that. I am beautiful. I'm old. I've got anger. I've got a knee ache. Our language, we talk like this every day, don't we? And we never question this assumption. But what we don't realise is this. What we don't realise is this. We think, when I say, if I'm made up of body and mind, and we can point to a part of my mind called anger, then you can point to the anger. There's a thought that exaggerates the badness of something when you do something, Attachment is a thought in the mind, it's part of the mind. Knee is a part of the body. We can point to those parts. Relatively speaking, we can point to the knee, we can point to the toe, can't we? Here's a toe. I have a toe. We can point to a toe, can't we? I have a knee. There's the knee. We have anger. You heard me scream the last 2 minutes and you can see I had anger. So we can sort of, relatively speaking, accept those things. Relatively, there was anger. Relatively, there's a knee. Relatively, there's a toe. We accept this? Okay? So then fine. Now let's do a little workshop, a little experiment before we have lunch. This point I'm trying to make. Buddha says that we think that there is a little bossy part in there that kind of runs the other parts. That's the boss, like the landlord, that is the owner or the boss of the other parts, and it's called I. Can you hear the words? Okay, let's see if we can disprove this. This is most annoying, so I'll explain. All right, we might have lunch at 1:10 past 1. So listen. I will say to you, I'll make a statement. I will say, I have a table, a cup and a clock. Now, when you hear that voice saying that, you go over to where the voice is and you put your eyes over here, and you will soon deduce quite quickly that there is a table. You understand this? There is a cup and there's a clock. Can we all accept this? Can we see this? So conventionally, that's a fact. Conventionally, we can see it. But I'll tell you the sentence again. I have a table, a cup and a clock. So how many phenomena did I mention?
3, 4.
No, it's 4. There's a fourth phenomenon called I. So conventionally speaking, if that's a true statement, and we would hope that the words we say are in fact true, otherwise we'll all go crazy. If that's a true statement, we have to prove that there are 4 phenomena, listen to this now, each of which obviously has to be separate from each other. Would you agree? So if I say I, then you've got to point out an I here, conventionally, that isn't the cup, that isn't the clock, and that isn't the table. Do you accept this? It's a perfectly reasonable assumption, isn't it? Conventionally, there is an I, and conventionally there's a separate cup, clock, and table. So it's 4 separate phenomena. Very simple, really easy, like nothing special. We proved it, okay? Now, I can also tell you I have a nose, a hand, and a foot. So we have to do, conventionally speaking, the exact same analysis. So then, let's point out the foot. Now this means, you see, this is the point about the word independent is a massively important word. It's a casual word we use, but in this understanding of non-duality, of emptiness and all this blah, 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 we've got to get the meaning of this word. Independent means not relying on each other. So would you agree that if the cup breaks, the clock works fine, doesn't it? If Robina walks away, the cup is still sitting there, the clock is there, and the table's there. So independent means separate, not having a relationship. Can you hear that? In a simple meaning, you can accept that reasonably, can't you? So now we have to point out a foot. So there's my foot, I'll cut it off. My hand still works fine, doesn't it? Would you agree with that? It does, doesn't it? If I cut my hand off, my nose works fine, doesn't it? Do you agree? So there's a foot that's not a hand, a nose, and a foot, and an eye. There's a hand that's separate as well. They're reasonable. That's reasonable understanding of independence. They're independent, not depending on each other. Can you hear those simple words? So now we've pointed out the hand, the foot, and the nose. So we now have to point out the 4th phenomenon called I that is not the hand, that is not the nose, that is not the foot, and indeed is not the knee, the love, the mind, the kaka, the pee-pee, the anger, the hate, and all the other bits and pieces. That's the I we think is there. We do believe, and it's called, in Christian terms, it's called a soul. In the different views in India, you call it an Atman. That there is something there, no matter how subtle, that is sort of the essence of who we are. And we desperately, hungrily, frantically want there to be that. And Buddha says, don't be ridiculous. You don't even need one. And this is not the subtlest meaning of emptiness here. So this is the thinking about dependent arising, and this is the point now. This leads us to the conclusion that finally, ultimately, there is no I independent of the parts. There can't be. Because if there were, this is the point now, if there were an I that's independent of the other parts, like the cup, when you break it, the clock is fine. So as Lama Zopa says, if there is an independent I, then the I can go to work and the body and mind can stay at home and have fun. This is a logical conclusion, but it's hilarious to us to hear it. Because instinctively we know that somehow I and mind and body are interdependent, but it therefore can't be independent. Because if it were, then if you wouldn't feel it. You wouldn't say the I am offended. This is what we have to think about. Just this alone is enough to meditate on for the next 20 years. So why don't we discuss it during lunch? So we have lunch. Lunch has come?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, so we haven't talked much about death today, have we? But never mind. Okay, so what questions do you have from all your discussions? It's helpful to have some knowledge. Any questions, people, from your discussions? Yes, sweetheart. Yes.
When we are thinking about the absence of...
Can't quite hear you, darling.
Yeah. Should I be louder?
Yes.
Yeah. When you are saying that there is no concept of an Atman or a soul, as it comes from Christianity or Hinduism,
Uh-huh.
what is it that is undergoing
That's what we're discussing. So just keep listening. That's what we're discussing. That's what we're talking about. So we'll keep talking. Good. Any other questions? Any other questions? Yes.
How do you apply the concept of emptiness to consciousness?
Yeah, to consciousness. What do you mean by that? What do you mean to consciousness?
Yeah.
Do you mean is the consciousness empty? What do you mean?
The part and sub-part theory. So is consciousness?
Yeah, made of parts. Yeah,
made
mind.
of various
Mind and
parts?
consciousness are synonymous, and the parts of consciousness, if we think of our mental consciousness, is thoughts. Yeah, they're the parts. Sure. Anger's a part. Anger's one of the components of mind. Mind, everything's made of some bits and pieces. So the bits and pieces of mind, remember, not the brain, are the thoughts. Yes, absolutely. Same.
And then does it disintegrate one consciousness? Does disintegrate integrate into multiple consciousnesses?
No,
from one
no concept like that. Minds at the moment we're all because we're all deluded. Okay, this is where it sounds a bit abstract. Here we are. The universe is made of trillions of different consciousnesses. Ants have a consciousness. The term in Tibetan is very tasty. The word we use in English, sentient being, actually the Tibetan word I find it much more accurate. It's the word mind possessor. So an ant is a mind possessor. Mind and consciousness here are virtually synonymous. So it's not physical, they're all beginningless, all endless, and all minds possess the potential to become a Buddha, a perfect mind. So an ant is a mind possessor, a hell being is a mind possessor, a god in the realms of existence in samsara. There's trillions of mind possessors, and they're all beginningless and endless, and they all possess Buddha nature, and they all have, So all minds are the same in that sense. But when we finally become an enlightened mind, Buddha, you could argue there's only one mind then. When you become Buddha and I become Buddha, we don't like bump into each other in the sky, if you like. It's a bit cosmic sounding. It's like a bit similar to the concept of one God. That there's just that one. When you're enlightened, I'm enlightened. There's one Buddha, but we've got millions of manifestations in bodies of Buddhas who manifest to benefit sentient beings. So at the moment there are separate minds, but where Buddha, there's not.
But where is the beginningless and endless mind?
Sorry, what, darling?
Where is the beginningless and endless mind concept coming then? If
What do you mean
there is
coming?
one mind in the end.
No, it's not. Those questions don't have any relationship. What do you mean? Where's the beginningless and endless come from? What do you mean by that?
No, this is the hypothesis that Buddhism is based on, that the mind is beginningless and it's endless.
Yeah, but so just stop right there. Don't worry about the other part. So what's the problem with that?
The problem is that when you say that the ultimate Buddha mind is that one mind.
Well, you could argue when you become Buddha and I become Buddha that we're the same knowledge, the same omniscience, the same compassion. You could argue because there's no relative form, there's no body, it's just pure consciousness. You could argue then it's like saying there's just one Buddha. You could say like that. So but what's that got to do with the first point? They're two separate points.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? Yes. Sweetheart, yes.
Have you found some way of understanding relativity which we could understand too?
That's what we're discussing here. That's all we're discussing.
Okay, so
That's what we're discussing here. The dependent arising is relativity. Another word for dependent arising is how things exist relative to each other. So cause and effect is an example of how things are existing relatively. This one here now about parts is how we exist relatively. Dependent arising is another term for relative. Interdependent or relative have the same meaning.
and this is Einstein's relativity?
No, this is Buddha's teaching. Oh, you meaning Einstein? I've got no idea what I've never heard anything. I've no idea. Yeah. Could be similar to dependent arising. I don't know. I haven't studied it. I wouldn't be surprised. Similar idea, Any other questions that came from your discussions? So what I wanted to do also from all the week we've been talking, I know you people are just coming today, we've been going through the death process, and maybe we can, anyway, we haven't finished all that yet, we've still got more to talk about. Talk about the practices to do once your loved one is dead. There's still many things we can do to help our loved ones. But somehow today we just talked about emptiness, what to do. It's the way it's gone. So we've just really begun the discussion about emptiness, so shall I continue?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. So the point is, in order to, like any body of knowledge, when in order to discuss it, you've got to be on the same page with the terminology, don't you? I mean, even now, I use computers and I can work with my Apple very nicely. I can do my iPad. I know what I'm doing. But you start talking to me technically about, servers and IP addresses. I get confused because I haven't learned the definitions. I haven't learned the language. And this is what happens with Buddhism. Let's say spiritual teachings. And then secondly, we've all got different definitions of all the words. So we just get utter. The confusion isn't because it's necessarily difficult, it is, but because we don't even have the same terms. We're just all speaking different languages, so no wonder it's confusing. So, people say, I've been thinking about emptiness for 30 years and I still can't understand it. Then I say to the person, well, please give me the definition of emptiness. Oh, I don't know. Well, of course you can't understand it. You can't even say what it is. It's like, I don't understand a computer. What is it? I don't know. Well, of course not. Got to start with the words. The words. We've got to start with the words. There's many ways of meditating on emptiness, but this is the approach of starting with the theories. Now, the fact is, in our world, what we call science, that's exactly the method. You can't, even creativity. You can't become a musician. You can't play the piano. You can't play Bach or Mozart by just sitting with your hands on the piano, hoping that they'll sort of channel through you and out will come music. I don't think so. You've got to squeeze your brain, as Lama Zopa puts it, and learn all the theories, which are so sophisticated, they're mind-boggling. I mean, the theories of music, just classical music, are so intellectual, so conceptual. But everybody knows that's the first step in learning to play the piano. We don't get surprised by it. But as soon as it comes to spiritual, people say, I don't want all these theories, I don't want philosophy, I want to practice. Well, you can't practice Mozart until you say the words, until you know the theories. You can't make a cake until you have the recipe. We all know this, but as soon as it comes to spiritual, we get so cosmic, So here we're discussing the words. So at least we just start with the words, and you get the words right, like the recipe, then you get a cake eventually. No question. It's logical. Same here. So the key words here that I'm trying to get you to get a sense of, if we're looking at dependent arising and emptiness, looking at conventional reality and ultimate reality, the two truths, as they talk about it. So another way of saying that is, if we point to everything in the universe, a cup, a toilet, a flag, a person, a building, a Buddhist center, a camera, you name it, you agree on it, you label it, you define it, we all agree, and then we can begin to discuss it. That's what we're doing here. So then what Buddha is saying is this, these are the words, what Buddha is saying, everything that exists, necessarily, whatever exists, necessarily, one, has the characteristic of existing interdependently, speaking very simply, or is a dependent arising, it's like a noun, it's a term they use in Buddhism. It means everything that existing is a dependent arising, or arises in dependence upon various factors. First, this way we're describing here three. First, everything that's impermanent exists in dependence upon causes, countless causes. I remember first hearing this from my philosophy teacher, Kensei Rinpoche Tampatikchok, who was the Sarah J. Abbot for many years. I studied with him in England in the 70s, my philosophy teacher. And I remember he's used, when we'd studied together, I was studying with him, and he used the example of the phenomenon called Robina. Well, clearly that's why I remember it, because me. He said, everything in the universe up to the first moment of Robina can be said validly to be a cause and a condition for the existence of Robina. Well, at the time I thought it would sound pretty cosmic, but it's logical. It's cause and effect. So you think, this cup, right? We establish a cup, flat-bottomed clay container that holds tea. Tick, 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 tick the boxes. We all agree that's a cup. So now what are the causes of a cup? Well, once you start, you can't stop. You can't find the first. You see, we all desperately want a first cause. This is what's fascinating. This is one of our commonest questions all around the world. Where did it begin? When did karma begin? When did suffering begin? When did I begin? This is a question we believe is a valid question. Buddha says you don't need it. What is the big question? What do you want a beginning for? Sounds shocking to us. And why do we ask this? Because the Buddha is suggesting that misconception is rooted in the root delusion that sees things as self-existent, inherently existent. Those words. Okay. So anyway, cup. If you start, well, what's the cause of this cup? Well, the first cause is the person who created it. You've got to admit, it didn't fall out of a tree. Mary Smith invented it. Let's say she invented it, she designed it, she conceptualized it. Then she has to, now then start there, right there, the cause of Mary Smith. Well, Mary Smith had a mummy, guess what? And Mary Smith's mummy had a mummy, and where can you find the first mummy? You keep going back for beginner's time to find the first mother. So everywhere you turn, all the things in the universe up to the first moment of cup, it's logical, it's as mad as it sounds. Everything that exists. So cause and effect, causes and conditions is the first level of dependent arising. So like I said, the way to apply that experientially is apply the law of karma, which is causes and conditions for this person, which counteracts the clinging to the poor self-pity me. So first level. Second one now, we're looking into this as a parts, more subtle. That everything that exists is made of bits and pieces, of parts. But arguing with the assumption, certainly from the Hindu teachings and indeed from the Christian teachings, that there's a being called a creator that's not, is like partless. So there's something holy about that. Not to mention not caused. These are counteracting prevailing views in the mind. The way ego-grasping works. So the way to counteract that by thinking about how a person, and we can be cup the same thing, how I exist, conventionally I, self, person, Robina, your name, whatever, exists in dependence upon parts. And you won't find any I among those parts, because I is nothing other than the coming together of those parts. But we feel instinctively, we never question it, that there is a separate part, and a part that's independent of, separate from the other parts. That is like, as I said, there's two ways they think. Either we think it's the boss part, the one that runs a show, I did that, I have this, these words. Or the other one we think is sort of all of me is the I. So what we have to do is rigorously, and this is why it just sounds so boring to us, rigorously hear these words and then use these words and argue intellectually with these misconceptions. That's the method. Thinking about dependent arising in clear, logical analysis, which is the argument that counteracts the assumption of an independent I. So that's the thinking about dependent arising, which then brings the conclusion, oh, I see, there is no independent I. That's the conclusion, which is emptiness.